poor black woman was bitten by a snake at the zoo, collapsing in pain, begging for help. But instead of rushing to save her, the manager chased her out in front of dozens of shocked onlookers. What they didn't expect? That one moment would ignite a storm they couldn't silence. Welcome to Black Stories, where racism is exposed in the unspeakable realist moments. Hit that subscribe button and comment where you're watching from. Because this story? It's not just about a bite. It's about a silent act that shook an entire company to its core. Danielle Moore had looked forward to this day for weeks. It wasn't easy to carve out time between 2 part-time jobs, evening classes, and caring for her daughter, but today, she'd managed. The city's community access program had given her 2 free zoo passes, and with a packed lunch, a pair of second-hand sunglasses, and Maya's favorite purple backpack slung over her shoulder, Danielle was ready to give her 7-year-old the kind of memory that kids carry for life. The sun burned hot above Dallas that morning, casting sharp shadows on the pavement as Danielle and Maya approached the front gate. A banner read, "Wild Wonders Zoo, where every family belongs." Danielle smiled at the slogan, but the warmth quickly faded the moment she stepped into the ticket line. Maya was buzzing with excitement, bouncing on her toes and pointing out every animal on the cartoon map she'd been gripping since they left the house. "Mommy, I want to see the snakes first, and the flamingos, and the lions." "We'll see it all," Danielle said softly, smoothing Maya's braids, her eyes scanning the people ahead. It was a long line, mostly white families in cargo shorts and branded water bottles, chatting casually as the attendants waved them through. Then, it was their turn. Danielle approached the counter and slid her printout across the glass. The young white attendant stared at the paper, then at Danielle. Where did you get this?" Her voice was polite, but laced with a subtle tension. "It's a community pass," Danielle replied, her voice calm. "It was part of the city's weekend access program. We got it through the outreach center." The woman didn't move. She frowned, flipping the paper back and forth, then leaned over to whisper to a coworker. Danielle felt the heat of embarrassment crawl up her neck. She looked around. The line behind them was growing. The other attendant glanced at the ticket, shrugged, and whispered something back. The first one nodded, then turned toward Danielle again with a tight smile. "I'm just going to have a manager take a quick look, okay?" Danielle forced a smile. "Sure." Maya's voice cut through the tension. "Are we going in now, Mommy?" "In just a minute, baby," Danielle said, crouching down beside her. "Just a little hiccup, that's all." But inside, she felt the ache of something too familiar. The questioning, the doubt, the need to explain to prove she belonged. A white woman with 2 kids in tow stepped up to the counter next to them, flashing the exact same community pass. She was met with a cheerful, "Welcome," and handed 2 tickets without a second glance. Danielle stood, her stomach twisted. After a full 5 minutes, a tall man in a red zoo polo approached. He looked down at the pass, then up at Danielle, his eyes scanning her outfit, plain khakis, a clean but faded white t-shirt, worn sneakers. "This is for the outreach program?" he asked. "Yes," Danielle said, her voice firmer now. "Do you have a city ID or any documentation showing your eligibility?" His tone was smooth, professional, but condescending in a way that made her teeth clench. She inhaled slowly. "No, it's not required. The pass is all that's needed. It's already coded with the validation." He held her gaze for a moment too long before finally nodding. "Fine. Print them too." He walked off without another word. The attendant finally pushed 2 tickets through the slot. "Enjoy your visit," she said, eyes down. Danielle didn't answer. She took Maya's hand and walked through the turnstile, the sound of the scanner beep loud and cold in her ears. As they entered the shaded courtyard with colorful animal statues and bubbling fountains, Danielle tried to shake it off. This was supposed to be a good day. She looked down at Maya, whose smile had already returned. "Can we get ice cream later?" Maya asked, eyes wide. Danielle nodded. "You bet. But first the snakes." They made their way toward the exhibit maps, passing a group of employees chatting near the information booth. One of them, a young white woman, watched Danielle for a beat too long, then leaned over and whispered to her colleague. The two of them laughed behind their hands. Danielle caught it. She always caught it. They walked on. Inside the butterfly garden, a group of teenagers blocked the path. Danielle asked politely if they could pass. The teens ignored her, until one of them, a boy, turned and said, "You don't have to get all angry about it." She hadn't raised her voice, hadn't even frowned, but her presence, her authority, it was already framed as aggression. They moved on again. Danielle was silent now. By the time they reached the reptile house, the heat had climbed higher and the crowd had thickened. Danielle looked around for a zoo map station, trying to figure out the best route to avoid the crowds. Maya tugged at her shirt, begging to hurry. She approached a nearby staff member, an older white man in khaki shorts and mirrored sunglasses, and asked if there was a shortcut to get to the snake exhibit. He barely glanced at her. "Around the back, through the side path. Just follow the fence and take the gate by the trash bins." Danielle blinked. "Is that a visitor path?" He grunted. "It's a shortcut. If you don't mind skipping the gift shop." He turned and walked away before she could say anything else. Danielle hesitated. Something felt off, but the crowd was pressing in, and Maya was already tugging her toward the side path. So she followed, and didn't see the broken warning sign until it was too late. The gravel beneath Danielle's shoes shifted as she stepped onto the narrow path. It wasn't paved like the rest of the zoo walkways. It looked more like a utility road than a visitor trail. The fencing on her left was rusted, dented in places, and lined with an uneven row of shrubs that looked half dead under the summer sun. To her right, towering metal bins overflowed with cardboard and spoiled fruit rinds, the sharp scent of ammonia stinging her nose. Maya wrinkled her face, waving her hand. "Mommy, it smells funny." Danielle adjusted the strap on her shoulder, glancing behind them. The noise of the main crowd had already faded, swallowed by the trees and the hum of unseen generators nearby. "We'll be quick," she said softly. "He said it leads right to the snake house." The deeper they walked, the more forgotten the path felt. Grass burst through cracks in the concrete edges, and the buzzing of insects grew louder, more erratic. Flies swarmed around a puddle of something Danielle didn't dare identify. Her grip on Maya's hand tightened instinctively. They passed a small rusted sign that had fallen sideways into the weeds. Danielle squinted. The white letters were chipped, but she could still make out the words, "Staff only. No public access." She froze. Her mind screamed for her to turn back. But just up ahead, she spotted a green structure with the unmistakable mural of a coiled python painted across its side. The snake exhibit. Maybe the man had just meant to save them time. Maybe this was just one of those gray areas of the park, technically off limits but harmless. She exhaled slowly and kept walking. That was the moment it happened. Something shifted in the grass. A rustling noise, too deliberate, too sudden. Danielle instinctively stepped in front of Maya just as something sleek and glinting lashed out from the brush. A sharp, blinding pain burst through her ankle, hot, white, immediate. She screamed. It was primal and sharp. Not like the composed voice she'd used at the ticket counter or the warm reassurance she'd given Maya all morning. This was raw. From somewhere deep, Maya cried out, "Mommy!" Danielle stumbled backward, nearly collapsing. She caught herself against a warped utility pole, her vision spinning. Her ankle throbbed violently. Blood welled up around 2 deep puncture marks, already beginning to swell. Her heart hammered in her chest as the buzzing around her seemed to increase. A sudden, oppressive wall of sound. A snake, a small copperhead, no more than 2 feet long, coiled briefly, before slithering back into the brush, vanishing like it had never been there. Danielle's knees buckled. She dropped to the ground, grabbing Maya close. "Maya," she gasped. "Run. Get help. Scream, if you have to." But the girl didn't move. She just cried, arms frozen at her sides, eyes locked in terror. Danielle fought to stay conscious. Her skin prickled. The pain spread like fire through her leg. pulsing with each heartbeat. Someone had to hear them. Someone had to be nearby. Danielle pulled herself up, one arm wrapped around Maya. She limped forward, her breath ragged. Every few steps, the pain doubled. She cried out again, this time not caring who heard. Finally, they reached the main path again. Families stared as Danielle emerged limping, sweaty, holding Maya close. Some backed away, clutching their children. She's bleeding, someone whispered. Was she attacked? Danielle tried to speak, but her throat was dry and her lips trembling. Help, she rasped. A snake. I was bitten. Please. A security guard approached but slowly, with clear hesitation. He looked down at her ankle, then back up at her, eyes flicking between her and Maya. You say it happened where? Danielle pointed behind her, barely able to lift her arm. They told us to take the shortcut, near the dumpsters. That man in the sunglasses. A woman with a stroller passed by and muttered, who just walks into an off-limits area? Danielle's chest clenched. She wasn't being treated like someone in danger. She was being treated like a problem. The security guard reached for his radio but didn't speak into it right away. He asked again, are you sure you didn't step where you shouldn't have? Danielle stared at him, stunned. I was told to go that way. I asked for directions. The buzzing returned not from insects this time, but from the growing tension in the air. People were whispering, filming. Maya clung to her mother's waist. Mommy, she whispered. Why are they just looking at us? A second guard arrived, then a young woman in khaki shorts and a zoo t-shirt. She had gloves and a basic first aid kit, but even she looked uneasy. The medic knelt down but didn't get close. Can I ask, were you trying to touch the animal? Danielle couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her mouth opened, then closed. She felt dizzy. No, she said. I was just following what I was told. The medic looked over her shoulder at one of the guards. Should we wait for the manager? Danielle's vision blurred. The heat, the pain, the humiliation, everything was closing in. All she could do was sit there, in the middle of the walkway, bleeding and being questioned like a suspect. Maya began to cry, and still, no one helped her stand. Danielle sat slumped on the hot concrete, her arms wrapped tightly around Maya, who trembled in silence. Blood trickled steadily from her ankle, soaking into her sock, spreading like a dark flower in the dirt. The world spun. Her breath came in shallow bursts. The heat was unbearable, but worse was the weight of every eye. On her, the crowd of strangers gawking, whispering, judging. She wasn't a mother in need. She wasn't a woman in pain. She was a disturbance. The first aid worker knelt nearby but kept her distance. Gloves on, knees hovering above the ground like touching her might be unsafe. She finally reached into her bag and pulled out a cold pack. No gauze, no stretcher, no anti-venom. Just a disposable ice pack, cracked and handed over like a party favor. Danielle took it, her fingers barely closing around the plastic. This is it? She asked, her voice hoarse. The girl blinked. We're waiting for the manager. He'll decide the next steps. A ripple passed through the crowd. A man in sunglasses raised his phone to record. Another woman scoffed under her breath. Drama. The words hung heavy, louder than the engine hum or the chirping birds. Danielle closed her eyes, trying to block it all out. But then came the sound of firm, heavy footsteps. They echoed across the pavement, deliberate and slow. Where is she? The voice was clipped, cold. Danielle opened her eyes and looked up into the face of a man she would never forget. Mr. Barrington. White, tall, in his 50s, neatly groomed with sharp blue eyes that didn't blink when they met hers. His maroon zoo manager badge gleamed in the sun like a badge of judgment. He didn't kneel, didn't ask if she was okay. He folded his arms and looked down at her, the way someone might look at a spilled drink in a museum. Ma'am, he said flatly, this area was not authorized for public access. Danielle's mouth fell open. I asked for help. A staff member, he told me. Which staff member? I don't know his name. He was older. Sunglasses. He told us to take the side path. Did you think to check the signs? They're clearly marked. Staff only. I didn't see it, she said, fighting back tears. I just followed what he told me. I was trying to get to the exhibit like everyone else. Like everyone else, Mr. Barrington echoed, the corners of his mouth tightening. Yet everyone else managed to stay within the designated areas. Strange. A few people snickered. Danielle's chest tightened. I was bitten, she said. I need medical help. You're treating me like I did something wrong. Mr. Barrington squatted slightly, not to help, but to meet her eye level, to look her directly in the face with slow disdain. You entered a restricted zone, he said. You endangered yourself, your child, and potentially the safety of our animals. Danielle's jaw clenched. I didn't climb any fences. I didn't break anything. I asked for directions. And I'm telling you, he said sharply, we've had similar incidents in the past. People trying to get too close, provoking animals, and then trying to blame staff when things go wrong. Maya clung to her mother's arm, silent now, her eyes wide. Danielle's voice cracked. Are you accusing me of hurting myself for attention? He didn't answer. He just stood. I've reviewed the situation, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear, and I'm asking you to leave the property immediately. What? Danielle blinked. You're throwing us out? You violated safety protocol. And now, you're creating a disruption in a family-friendly space. Someone behind her muttered, just leave already. I'm bleeding, Danielle shouted now, the tears finally breaking through. My daughter saw me get attacked, and you're punishing me for it? Mr. Barrington turned to the security guards. Escort her to the side exit. We'll note the incident in our report and forward it if needed. You mean forward it to cover yourself, Danielle said through clenched teeth. He didn't even flinch. Come on, Mommy, Maya whispered, her voice like glass. Let's just go. Danielle tried to stand, her leg wobbling beneath her. One of the guards took her arm, not gently, and began guiding her away from the path. Guests parted like she was contagious. Some filmed, some whispered. Most just watched with blank expressions, the kind that said, this isn't our problem. As they neared the gate, Danielle turned once more, her eyes locking on Mr. Barrington. You let this happen, she said, her voice shaking with rage. And you're going to pretend I'm the problem. Mr. Barrington didn't answer. He had already turned back to the crowd, adjusting his name badge, offering polite apologies for the unfortunate disturbance. The gate slammed shut behind her. The sun beat down. The street was silent. Danielle leaned against the hot metal fence, breathing hard. One arm wrapped around Maya. Her phone buzzed. A notification, then another and another. She opened the screen. Someone had uploaded the video. Her face, her pain, her cries, and the manager's coldness. One caption read, Woman gets bit by snake zoo, kicks her out instead of helping. Another, This just happened in Dallas. Y'all see the problem here? Danielle stared at the screen. For the first time in hours, she felt something shift not in her body, but in the air around her. People were watching now, not with silence, but with fire. Danielle barely slept that night. She lay in bed with her leg propped on pillows, the dull ache pulsing up to her hip like a cruel reminder. Her ankle was now swollen and purple, bandaged hastily at the urgent care she'd gone to after leaving the zoo. The nurse there was the first person all day who looked at her with real concern. Not suspicion, not judgment, just care. Maya had curled beside her, one arm across her chest, her little body finally asleep after hours of quiet questions. Why did they yell at you, Mommy? Why didn't they help? Questions Danielle couldn't answer. Not yet. The house was silent now. The fan hummed softly in the corner. Her phone, charging on the nightstand, lit up again. Another notification, then another. She sat up slowly, pain flaring in her side. She unlocked the screen and froze. The video. It had gone viral. What started as a shaky clip from someone's phone now had over 600 views on TikTok, on Instagram, on X. Every angle, every second of it, Danielle, stumbling out of the bushes, bleeding, clutching Maya, the security guards circling. Mr. Barrington's cold voice as he said, "We've had enough disruptions today." One video had captions burned in. "Mother bitten by snake. Gets kicked out instead of helped." Another had slowed down the moment Maya cried, "Why are they just looking at us?" It broke people. Thousands of comments flooded in. How is this real? They treated her like she was trespassing on her own existence. If she was white, they would have airlifted her out and given her free zoo passes for life. That child will never forget what they did to her mother. Danielle covered her mouth. Tears spilled down her cheeks, not the kind born from humiliation, but from something else. Something unexpected. People believed her. They saw her. Her phone buzzed again. A DM, then another. Journalists, civil rights activists, community leaders. A message from the Southern Equity Alliance. "We'd like to speak with you immediately." By sunrise, it had crossed 1.2 million views. News outlets picked it up by afternoon. Dallas Zoo under fire for alleged racial bias after snakebite incident. Her name was trending. Her face bruised, tear-streaked, was now everywhere. Still, she hesitated. She hadn't posted the video. Someone else had. She hadn't asked for any of this. She just wanted to take her daughter to see the snakes. But now? Now she had a choice. Later that day, she sat at her kitchen table with Maya drawing quietly beside her. A local news team had arrived, just one camera and two people, soft-spoken, kind. The interviewer, a black woman named Aisha, looked her in the eye and said, "You don't have to say anything. You're not ready to. But if you do, people are listening." Danielle spoke. She talked about how Maya was excited, how they were stopped before they even got in, how someone told her to take a path she thought was safe, how no one helped, how she was blamed while bleeding in front of her child. "But it wasn't just about a snake bite," she said. "It was the look in their eyes when I asked for help. Like I didn't belong. Like I was already guilty of something." Her voice cracked. "I bled in front of my daughter, and all they cared about was image control." The segment aired that evening. It was raw, honest, and unflinching. The response was instant. Hundreds of thousands more watched. Calls poured into the zoo. Protesters gathered outside the gates with signs reading, "Bitten, blamed, banished. Black moms matter. Who gets helped and who gets hurt?" By the next morning, the zoo's corporate office had posted a vague apology on social media. Something about guest safety and a thorough internal review. People weren't having it. The video kept circulating, and more footage emerged. Another visitor, a young Latina teen named Valeria, posted a new clip from the day. Her video showed the zoo employee in sunglasses, waving Danielle toward the side path, clearly saying, "Just take that shortcut behind the fence if you're in a hurry." That changed everything. There it was, undeniable. Danielle had been sent into danger, misled, then punished for it. The footage exploded online. Local news cut in mid-broadcast. New video confirms woman was directed to snake area by staff member. The zoo's leadership team scrambled. Mr. Barrington was nowhere to be seen. Danielle received a formal letter of apology from the zoo board. But what caught her attention was the attached offer, a private financial settlement, NDA included. They wanted to buy her silence. She declined. Instead, she stood with her lawyer, one of the top civil rights attorneys in the region, and announced legal action: gross negligence, racial bias, emotional distress, and endangerment of a minor. Standing at the courthouse steps, Danielle didn't hold back. "I didn't ask to be bitten," she said into the row of microphones. "But what hurt worse than the snake was being treated like my life didn't matter, like my daughter's fear didn't matter. That's not just bad policy, it's racism, plain and simple." Behind her, Maya held her mother's hand tightly, watching every camera flash with wide, quiet eyes. By the end of the week, the zoo manager had resigned. The zoo announced mandatory racial bias training, new safety protocols, and a public forum on guest equity. But Danielle wasn't done. She launched an initiative, Wild Justice, a program aimed at protecting Black families and children in public institutions, starting with field trips and zoos. Donations poured in, volunteers signed up. Maya even helped design the logo, a lioness, standing guard, eyes sharp and unafraid. 2 months later, Danielle returned to the zoo not as a guest, but as a guest speaker. A community outreach event had invited her to share her experience. She stood beneath the mural outside the reptile house, this time surrounded by families of every background. Some cheered when she stepped to the mic, others wiped tears. Danielle spoke clearly. "It wasn't the bite that defined me," she said. "It was the silence after. But I turned that silence into a voice, and now I'm never going quiet again." The crowd applauded. Maya beamed, and somewhere deep in the zoo, behind reinforced safety glass and revised signs, the snakes slept in silence, unaware that one bite had changed everything. Thank you for watching. If this story made your blood boil or broke your heart, don't just scroll. Subscribe now for more real stories that expose the silent injustices people try to hide. Because the next time it happens, it might be caught on camera. And we'll be here to tell it. This is Black Stories, where truth has no mute button.